My name's Aspen. My favorite thing about my dad is how he's caring. My dad is a consultant, and I wish my dad would take me to more Sixers and Eagles games this year.
One thing I love about my dad is how charismatic he is and how he is always wanting to help other people and always being there for my family. My dad, for a living, helps other business owners create successful businesses. And one thing I wish my dad didn't do was make me do these videos.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am super excited to talk to another GoBundance brother, Lance Knaub. Really looking forward to kind of digging into his backstory, understanding a bit more about who he is and what he does, and introducing all of you to him. This is his first long-form podcast, which I'm super excited to be the first long-form podcast for him. So I'm looking forward to just really digging in and kind of getting to know each other a bit deeper. And so with that being said, Lance, if you can, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about your family and your business.
Sure. Well, first of all, Adam, thank you for having me. I'm excited and scared all at the same time to be here. And for everyone listening, be sure to like and follow and subscribe. Adam's leadership is off the charts. You know, him and I were together last at a conference in Stowe, Vermont, and he's a massive presence in the room. So excited to be here. And yeah, I mean, talking about family is going to be fun because, probably don't have enough opportunity to reflect on our families. And especially as entrepreneurs, definitely that's part of my journey, right? Having made a lot of sacrifices in too little time at periods for family, and similar to you, having made some changes to do way better with it. So that's a big question. I guess I started my immediate family and just give me direction. So, my wife, Jodi, we're coming up on our 20-year wedding anniversary, May 21st. So I don't know when this will go live,
Nice.
but next week. So that's very exciting. And we've been together for 27 years. We pretty much had a kind of a real, what's the word I'm looking for? Fairy tale meeting. We actually both took a great opportunity and studied abroad for physical therapy, which they call physiotherapy in the UK. She was the class behind me, and we both ended up on spring break together in the Algarve, Portugal, and that's where first had some sparks. Although I definitely remember like a fire drill, like 2 a.m, and just the story is that I complimented her white sweater, and as we were all outside. So that's my wife, Jodi. We've got 3 amazing children. Our oldest is Sage, 17-year-old, and our son Aspen is 15, and our daughter Sierra is 13. And they're all, doing well. Exciting things going on. So I grew up in Pennsylvania. My parents are both living still in York, Pennsylvania, South Central Pennsylvania. My mother is Mimi, and my father is John. My father is trained as a heating and air conditioning. He was also served in the Army, and then he trained in HVAC, did his apprenticeship at York International, and stayed in the industry, and never really wanted to manage people, but just loved doing commercial heating and air conditioning. And even my mom is trained as a beautician, and she is tough. She got diagnosed with MS shortly after I was born. And, they both come from big families, and I'm an only child. My dad's one of my dad got out of the Army. He bought a 40-acre farm with a little, beat down house, and him and his other 6 brothers renovated the house. And my dad operated the farm, and evenings and weekends, we had cattle, pigs and sheep and billy goat at one time, pony at one time, and chickens. Pretty amazing that he could do all this evenings and weekends, and that was fun for me. Certainly, running tractors and taking care of animals at a young age. learned a lot of lessons. Didn't realize how good I had it really growing up. Everyone right now, even our, people in GoBundance, so many people are trying to get back to like self-sustainable living, and we kind of had that, and didn't realize how good it was. So those are some of the people in my immediate family.
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to dig a lot into that background because I really liked. I like that story. That's going to be a lot of fun. But tell me about your business as well before I start digging into the background.
Okay, sure. So Jodi and I are both physical therapists, and when I graduated in 1998, I worked for a few years. Didn't think I had an entrepreneurial bone in my body, and then after a couple of years, I realized that I thought physical therapy could be done better. And Jodi and I wanted to uniquely bring physical therapy and fitness together to serve clients better, and so that when they got in pain, we can actually take them along what we call the continuum of health, and really improve their lifestyle and fitness and build good habits. So in 2004, we rented a 300 square foot space, the size of an average bedroom. Startup cost under $2,000, and started Breakthrough Physical Therapy and Fitness. And within 2 years, we bought the fitness center we were renting from, and then we didn't realize we weren't protected in our lease from our friendly landlords. So we had to do something. We took a bold move and took 6,000 square feet next door, which is very large for physical therapy, 2/3 of a retailer, a fashion bug. And we brought physical therapy and fitness together in a big way. And I didn't have a plan. We didn't have a plan. And we didn't have formal business training. Unfortunately, we had some mentors just to prevent us from going off the track completely. And we really put our heart and soul into the practice, took on our best people as partners. And in 2015, one of our partners expressed interest in running the company at a development plan meeting. And we groomed them for a couple of years. And in 2018, they took over the CEO role of our 5-location multi-million-dollar company. That was our first child. And the days, weeks, months, and years where we hadn't even gotten paid, it was definitely our biggest, asset. And that was fun. They did well. I was able to spread my wings and, figure out what I wanted to do next. And it was serve other entrepreneurs. And I'm just having a blast helping other owners with their small businesses to healthy life and a healthy business that they could keep or sell whatever they wanted to do.
Man, that's phenomenal. I oftentimes, like when I'm on a real estate podcast and I mention like the very first deal I ever did was a 62 unit apartment. It was my very first investment property ever. And people are like, what the heck? A 62 unit apartment? Who starts it? Like usually you see people start with a single family. Maybe they buy a duplex or a triplex and you jump right into an apartment building. And then I listen to your story and I'm like, this guy just said, I'm renting this 300 square foot thing. I think we got something here. Let's go get this 6,000 square foot thing and build something. I have no idea what I'm doing. Right. So I think that's just part of what we do sometimes. And, if you have the confidence in yourself to be able to do it, then you might as well jump in and make it happen. There's no substitution for execution. So go out and do it. You know what I mean? So I'm very interested now, especially to get into your background because I'm wondering what was there in the background that led to somebody thinking the way you think now and how you got to that point where you're just like, I want to jump into this. So obviously you told us a little bit about your dad already, but let's dig into that a little bit more. Tell me what it was like growing up, like who your dad was, like what you know about his background, maybe even what you know about his dad and what it was like for him growing up.
Sure. Yeah. So interesting story because, my dad has a German background and my mom's Italian. So the Germans are I'll start with the Italians. Italians are very loving and ugly and, affectionate. And the Germans are at my Knaub family get-togethers, we like shake hands, if anything, and it's like, whoa. And it's hard to get the information and the stories out at times. But at my dad's 80th birthday party 2 years ago, he was telling a lot of stories and we're really trying to get more information out. So his family was in the city of York, and in a row house they grew up. And my dad's mother actually passed away having what would have been their 10th child. So these 9 children were, I learned, were almost all put in for foster homes.
Wow.
But luckily, my great aunt Teresa and some family pulled together, and my grandfather, who I never met because my dad was young when when well, my dad never was young when his mom passed, and was young when his dad passed. So I never met my grandparents on that side, and so my dad was the second sibling. So my uncle Pete and him really had to do a lot for the family, and so my grandfather, my dad's father, who I never met, continued to work, and between my aunt Teresa and a little bit of home help in the house, were able to earn a living, and they had apparently a rental unit
Mhm.
in maybe the garage in the alley street or something to bring in a little extra revenue to try to make ends meet. And so it was pretty rough. And you had 7 boys and 2 girls. I mean, God bless my Aunt Fran and my Aunt Sis. And apparently they did pick up a lot of slack, as you can imagine, and probably did more than their fair share of like housekeeping and
Mhm.
laundry and um, but yeah, these guys were like a gang. Apparently, I've heard stories
I can
from
see
their
that.
friend Charlie Braun, who became my barber in New York, and I've heard a lot of stories over the years. So yeah, they were in the city, but they all did well and are very close knit because our family, right, with 9, we've got a big family, the 9
Yeah.
siblings, and they, with all their children. So on both sides of my family, I mean, I had 40 first cousins. My wife was like, "Whoa!" At her wedding, she's like, "Yeah, big family." Because even now, the Knob family, like we need to do better at getting together more
Mhm.
often. We're not as close as the original 9 were. So that was a little bit about my dad's kind of city, childhood and what I know.
Yeah, my mom is the youngest of 12. This is not like a one-up situation by any means, but my
Yeah,
mom is the youngest of 12 and my dad is the second youngest of 9. So having that many aunts and uncles, I completely understand. Like on my dad's side, um, they don't ever get together, right? Like the last time they were all together was when my dad's mom passed away. I mean, and that was in like 2002, so
right.
that was the last time they were all together. And my mom's side, we've had multiple family reunions and all the stuff that goes into that. Like, I mean, it was just, and we've rented out like state parks for their family reunion because it's a lot of people, when you combine, especially both sides, the Hammond and the Kuntz as they are,
Oh, I love it.
bringing all
Yeah,
of them together. It's like a crazy world to combine. So very familiar on the German side of the house with those names, Hammond and Kuntz.
okay.
But man, oh man, just a couple weeks ago, my uncle passed away, my mom's brother, and we flew up to
So
North Dakota for that, and I appreciate it. But it was
yeah,
one of those moments where talking to his kids, who I haven't seen since I was little. I think the last time I saw him, I was probably 10, maybe.
okay.
So a long time ago. My kids would say like 100 years ago.
Yeah,
So it was ridiculous to see them, and like I wouldn't have, like I could have passed by both of them and not recognized them in the grocery store.
yeah.
And so to sit there and hang out with them and go, why? Like we need this more, right? The cousins need to get together and make sure that these reunions are still happening because again, with my mom being the youngest of 12, like this is going to be a trend where sadly more of them are going to be passing. So
Mhm.
we can't
Yeah,
make it only funerals where we all get together. So let's try to figure out a way to do this. So,
yeah,
but yeah, having the 40 cousins completely can relate. It's a wonderful time to be able to see all of it. But what a different world, growing up from a row house to, what he did with you and, living out on a farm and, starting to do all of that. Like what a change. But, as you were, so yeah, let's go into kind of him growing or you being raised by him. Now, we
yeah.
kind of have a good idea of where he came from, and I can't imagine being stuck with that. Like no parents at all. You're with aunts and uncles, but I mean, there's so many
And
stories
it
that
was
way.
a
So
small house. I mean, I think for 9 kids, maybe 2 bathrooms. It was
yeah,
pretty. Yeah, it was a row house.
yeah, yeah, but it wasn't abnormal. I don't think at that time either. Well, at least from
Yeah,
my understanding of my family, where they lived. I mean, it wasn't big town having big, like they were farm country and doing all the stuff. So
yeah,
my mom still tells stories, and she's not like super old by any means, but she tells stories about how they had to go to the outhouse to go to the bathroom, right? Like there wasn't there's no running water, all this stuff. And it's like, well, farm field in North Dakota, that's what you do, I guess. But so what did he do? Like as he was growing up and then, getting married, tell me kind of how that kind of all came to be and then what it was like for you growing up with him as your dad.
Yeah. So my dad was obviously very handy. He was a mechanic in the Army. He was busy around the farm, and we even built an addition on the farmhouse. And so he would teach me, handy things. I resisted that for whatever reason. I didn't really become skilled and didn't really love it. And some of my best memories of my dad were playing basketball together. My son's at that age right now. He's definitely as a freshman, getting faster and stronger and way younger with that tipping point for sure. And trying to enjoy playing some basketball together. But I can remember going to church and on Sundays after church, there would be this school for boys, this reform school for boys. So even though I grew up in Spring Grove, I was exposed to some diversity. And my dad he's just super honest and high character and, sort of straight laced. And so we would go to the school and play basketball with people from all over. And that was a lot of fun. And definitely some of my best memories, just really, because basketball became something I loved and still play to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have a lot of good memories about, playing basketball with my dad. And in summer times, when people would come to visit us, they were, I remember my cousins from California coming in, and they would, we give them, rides on the tractor and they'd be riding the ponies, and it was just a whole new experience. And I didn't go to summer camps. It was just like, okay, at that time growing up, it was just like, okay, go play. And for me, even just to round up a handful of friends, I mean, we would do a walk or ride a bike for miles. And of course, at that time it was normal not to really know we don't have freedom.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of my dad was, so he was working, full time during the day, come home and do all the things needed to take care of, a farm and garden with all those types of animals. And we watch some sports at night, and we would try. I remember a lot of dinners together, which was not easy and a challenge in today's world. So that was good. And I went to school once, during like basketball season and whatnot. I went to school in the city of York, where my dad grew up, at St. Rosalima. So I either it was a 30-minute drive consecutively, but when I took the school bus, I mean, it could take an hour and a half, hour 45, 2 hours. So it was a big commute. Some great memories with my dad. I wish I totally regret not learning more of the handy and mechanical skills that he really wanted to teach me more.
Mm-hmm. What is it that you think that made you resist that?
I don't know. I think it was me. Maybe a part of it was wanting to be different and be me. And at some age, this is totally wrong, right? With the farm and even like a blue collar position, I can remember not feeling great about that.
Mm-hmm.
Having some insecurity about that. So I don't know if it was that or not, but certainly that came into play at some time, being different and not having enough confidence to love that and to welcome that.
Yeah, it's and you said you're an only child, right?
Correct.
Okay. So with all of your friends, were they, when typically if you're out on a 40-acre farm, you tend to be around other people that have 40-acre farms if you're riding your bike. But were your friends similar to your upbringing, or did they have a kind of a different upbringing?
Yeah, I guess that's a great question. I kind of had this like dichotomy, like in Spring Grove, Pennsylvania, there were friends, I mean, literally Buddy and Dinky and, people that lived in Spring Grove. which Spring Grove was just known for like a paper plant. That was, the main industry that it had there. And so not all of them necessarily had farms, but, they would go see drag races. And it was totally
Mm-hmm.
different. When I went to St. Rose, going to a private school, to a Catholic school, it was very professional
Yeah.
people for the most part. And so it was like a real dichotomy, which was a blessing for me to get
Mm-hmm.
exposed and have that much diversity. But again, I didn't probably appreciate that enough at the time.
Yeah. When do you think that you started to get that appreciation? And when did you think that you started to have that mental shift there?
Definitely not up until eighth grade, and probably not even in college, right? I mean, really take some maturity, because I can remember, this just came up in a conversation with my wife, Jodi, that when I was in seventh and eighth grade, that's when cable was coming on, like on TV, and being
Mm-hmm.
at Spring Grove, I was like one of the only people at St. Rose that didn't have cable and just sort of felt out of touch. It would almost be like not having a cell phone today.
Yeah.
And, we've seen the younger people whose families don't have a cell phone, and it's great, right? However, they often they are excluded from both the activity
Yeah.
and even like the online, culture. So that was my version of that. I really did feel out of touch. And so it was much later, for sure, that I realized how good I had it and how much of a blessing it was. Even like in eighth grade, and this was like borderline, like love hate. Like my parents welcomed my whole eighth grade class, and we had a sleepover, and we had a big party. I mean, St. Rose, it was only maybe 20, 25 people, but party. Everyone slept in the barn, and we
Nice.
ran around, and he drove us to church on the back of a pickup truck. We went, it was the days where you were just held on, and it was like a lot of fun, but a little bit borderline uncomfortable for me, because it was so different
Yeah.
from everyone else. And again,
Yeah.
I wasn't at a place to appreciate that, but it was like a little bit of embarrassment. I'm trying to get the right word, but something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that happens with all of us. I think if we're on, like, there were some friends that when I was younger, I went to their
Yeah.
house and I was like, "Boy, you have a really nice house." Like,
Right.
I'm not sure we're supposed to be friends, and it was like,
Yeah.
it made you feel shame, because and
Yeah.
my mom always talked about, like, I grew up in public school, so it never made sense to me, like, school uniforms. Do people really like really school
Right.
uniforms? Like, that's going to make people like feel like they're the same, right? The military does it; they force you to wear uniforms because
Yeah.
you're not comparing
Yeah.
yourself to anything. But then you look at it and you're like, no, like, people immediately they'll start comparing clothes. Like, oh, that kid's clothes are dirtier than mine, or that kid's clothes are nicer than mine, or that kid's clothes. And then it's such an
Totally.
immediate like innate thing to try to find who your crew is. And when you had
Yeah.
that dichotomy between those two, I would imagine it was just a little bit difficult. And then and then all of a sudden it turns into hay rides. The dichotomy clashes, and okay, well, now how does this work, right?
Yeah.
How did you work with that mentally when that did? I'm sorry, you're about to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, the uniform thing is so interesting, right? Because I mean, you were trying to make things level with a uniform at Catholic schools, for example, and the girls actually had were able to wear the same clothes, but the guys, we just kind of had to dress up in high school. In grade school, we did have to wear more similar, like literally a maroon top. And
Yeah.
high school, it was either a sweater or a jacket and a tie, and it was very different. People with very expensive clothes down to, we were a single income family, and my dad had a blue collar job. And so, yeah, definitely felt that difference, noticed that difference. And again, it's on me, some of that, insecurity for sure. So, yeah,
that leads me to
clothes. Yeah.
Question on, like, if you're aware of that now, like, that it's on you for that insecurity, and I think it's difficult because as a 10 or 12-year-old, how do you really label what insecurity is, right? If you're 10 or 12, it's tough to really kind of narrow in what that means. Right. You just know you're insecure and you don't want to talk about it, not even with your parents. So
because at that age, I just knew that in seventh grade, I didn't have the jams that were $40 a piece at that time.
Yeah.
And, that's what I knew. And then I, absorbed some of those feelings.
Yeah. How do you now? I mean, you're successful. You've got a strong, growing business. Your kids are obviously growing up very differently than you did. Where maybe now they have the $40 jams and the other kids don't, right? So, how do you have conversations now, looking back at the way you grew up, to ensure, or hopefully ensure, or maybe you're not doing this? Like, it's kind of a leading question, to ensure that they don't get any of the superiority feeling going the other direction, where they're making other kids feel like you did.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And definitely this is real because even in our circle of friends, like in the GoBundance world, Joe Coswano mentioned exactly this 2 months ago in a Philly Tribe meeting as the main thing on his mind. So, yeah, I mean, I'm very, humbly blessed, and so are you. And so that is a real thing. And it's definitely, I want our kids to, appreciate money and learn money. And so I guess some of the things that are happening is my daughter Sage has been working for a couple of years now, and I've seen that make a difference. My son's just started working for about a month, besides pet sitting for the neighbors, but that's kind of small. But now having his first real job, and I'm very impressed. He's been working all day Saturdays, and that's making a difference. So I really do try. Jodi and I both try to make sure that they are appreciating everything we have. Take opportunities to do like gratitudes together on our Sunday family meals, and getting the kids exposed to volunteering in other settings with less people with less has been a strategy. And even my daughter, like her dance company, so Sage and Sierra both dance. Sierra is not dancing now, but that dance community. So besides being a biz dad, I'm a dance dad. The socioeconomics of the dance school are outrageous, like really high. And like our kids are asking us, why don't we have a beach house, and all these things, when they're younger. So, but their current dance school, Easy Dance, does a great job of getting them out to volunteer and leading by example, really, fundraising and doing some things. So those are just a few of the things, but it's definitely a big challenge for sure. It's easy to not appreciate all the abundance that we have.
Yeah, I think it takes intentionality on your part, on our part, to really know that like we're engaging our kids to help them understand where they are, like how. And it's funny. Tim, why am I forgetting his last name? He's a GoBundance guy, but he was like, "Look, my kids, were commenting all the time about how wealthy we were," and I said, Daddy's wealthy. You are broke. Like you are very broke. Daddy is wealthy, right? And it was, and that's not. I love it. It's tongue in cheek and it's a lot of fun. But at the same point, like helping our kids know, like no, like we worked hard for what we've got and are still working hard to grow what we have. I mean, they see me work my butt off trying to make sure that I'm always. Oh, Daddy, do you always have to be in the office? Well, if you like living, yeah, if you like things, I kind of have to do this, right? So, but exposing them to a whole other world of stuff that they don't get to see. The other day we were driving around and even telling the story feels weird, but there was a homeless guy or a guy that was next to us and he was walking around with a cane. And I often tell my kids that I won't. 99 times out of 100, I won't give them money, but I will gladly buy them food, buy them whatever. I don't know where the money goes, but I do know where the food goes, right? So they're like, Dad, like my son asked me, can we buy them? Can we go buy him lunch? So we drove around, went and bought him lunch. He understands the difference between the guy on the corner and us, and where we can do and how we can help serve these people that have less. And the guy like completely was so overwhelmed by us dropping this bag of food off for him. And, I was honored that my son was like, let's do this. Like, we need to go do this for this guy. It felt so good for him at 9 years old to be excited to do that. And I was like, man, I want to pass that as much as possible. That the heart that they have is phenomenal. So that level of intentionality of, I will absolutely turn this car around and go buy some food for that person because that's what you want to do. He's even brought up, he's like, I want to have like a bag in the middle of the car that just has food that we can always just reach in and give to them. And I was like, all right, well, let's figure out how we can do it. Like that's awesome. Like, so,
that's amazing. Kudos to you. And, just to share a story, it was, I guess 2 years ago, we were in Italy, and I think our last night, our youngest daughter, Sierra, exactly that. After dinner, she saved part of her meal, and she's like, Daddy, can we go give this to someone who needs it? And we walked around Rome and found someone in need, and the look on their face. I mean, it was really just. I was ready to cry. It was just really special to see her like hand food to someone who needed it, and they were just so appreciative.
That's awesome. I love hearing that about the kids, especially wanting to do that, and the dads who are willing to, parents, I should say, as across the board, that are willing to seek that out and help them, achieve that feeling. Once you start giving back, there's not much like that. Like in my personal experience, I love to give. That's just something I love. I'll give myself poor in some circumstances, and it's and it's to see my kids want to engage in that is phenomenal. All right, so I'm going to go back to your story a little bit, right? So growing up, how did you get to decide to go to physical therapy school? Growing up on a farm, going to a Catholic school, or sounds like Catholic school, St. Mary's. How did you then go, you know what? Physical therapy sounds great. I want to work with my hands, but not on a barn. So, like, how did that kind of go through?
Yeah, and I guess just to balance things out, I'll just mention quickly about my mom's side of the family a little bit, and I'm just going to touch on that later. But my mom's parents, I was lucky enough to grow up with them. So, and my grandparents were native Italian speakers, and my grandfather came over from Sicily, like on the boat, literally on the boat when he was probably 17. And he was illiterate. So he worked in American Chain was the company in New York. He also lived in a row house in New York City. And he apparently was offered promotions, but when they found out he was illiterate, he couldn't take them. So he worked his entire career and had traditional retirement. But we were very close because I lived in New York, and some of my cousins that had moved out to California and whatnot didn't have the bonding time. So my grandfather and my grandmother, Carmela, she, was an Italian speaker, but she was born in New York. And so, I mean, my grandfather and grandmother, they cooked the sauce all day long. They cooked the people. So I would come home and they were closer to St. Rose, so I would get to walk during basketball season, at least walk to their house after school, have a good meal, relax with them, enjoy time with them, do some homework, go to basketball practice, and then you back to Spring Grove. So I had pretty amazing, grandparents with all that Italian culture and the good food and the love and the warmth. Very strong personalities as well. Passion and, definitely some heated conversations and everything else. But that was my grandparents on my mom's side. And, my mom, similar to my dad, didn't go to college and, studied to be a beautician. And that was her career path, right? I mentioned she got multiple sclerosis, MS. And she continued to try to, really. I remember having vision problems as a child, which was scary. And, just like some early, motor signs, symptoms, just like weakness and different things, and anxiety attacks in the car. So she was brave and fearless and continued to try to be a beautician part-time and to, really, have a career as well. So, neat lady, strong lady, and, lucky to have my parents still. So to answer your question, over time, I even though I didn't want to learn hands-on work exactly the way my dad did it, I knew I wanted to help people and be involved in healthcare. I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist. And I went to overconfidence because I accepted every pharmacy school I applied to. And I went to Rutgers. And I realized and remembered I didn't like chemistry.
That's kind of needed. That's a necessary tool there.
Yeah, so between not liking chemistry and being 17 and having a lot of freedom for the first time, I definitely didn't start off on a great track. Once I became focused and was exposed to physical therapy, then I heard about a program overseas, and I really was just trying to open my mind up to the world. It seemed like the best of both things because I hadn't traveled that much as a child. We didn't really do family vacations.
Yeah.
You know, my mom sent me away with my Uncle Frank sometimes, and you know, they went down to South Carolina, Hilton Head, and you know, I was lucky to have a few trips like that. But really, not any regular, consistent vacations with my mom and dad. You know, I can only gone to Canada one time for like a fishing trip. So really wanted to see the world and travel. So it was a great opportunity to kind of do both. And lived and studied for 2.5 years in Aberdeen, Scotland. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I think I told you on the pre-call that I really want to make it out to Scotland with my dad and go on a golfing trip with him, and do a golf and Scotch tour.
We'll talk.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Ireland, Scotland.
definitely.
I want to go check it all out and do as much golfing as humanly possible. So,
You'll have a
we'll
blast.
see how it all
Yeah,
goes.
we'll definitely. Yeah, we'll talk too. I played Carnoustie and St Andrews, the new course, and
Nice.
I'm not a big golfer, but you know, I'm pointing in the right direction. Definitely still have some friends there that can help.
Oh, for sure, that'd be awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be lovely. So you go to college. You're out in Ireland or Scotland. You meet your wife. Fast forward, where did you get kind of the? How did you get to the point where you decided you wanted to open this 6,000 square foot thing? Right. I mean, you and your wife hit it off in another country, come back and like full steam ahead. Like, well, how was that?
Yeah.
How did that thought process go? Where did that start?
Yeah, well, I definitely don't necessarily recommend this for everyone. But if you really have a strong relationship, we got married in May of 2004, and then we started our first official month's rent in June of 2004.
Nice.
So, you know, getting married and then starting a business together, that is definitely a great test. So you have to have a really strong foundation. And you'll learn a lot about each other, and you'll hopefully get closer going through some of those hard times together. And there were plenty of hard times in the beginning years and even ongoing, right? They never really go away completely, for sure. So, we were both, practicing, our respective places. Jodi was in New York for like 6 months and the position ended. So she came to Southern New Jersey. And I worked in brain injury for a year, and then I realized I really liked orthopedics and sports medicine, so I went into that for a couple of years and was just mastering my craft. Did my doctorate in physical therapy, got board certified in orthopedics. Just wanted to be the best that I possibly could. Jodi was doing the same, just really mastering our craft. And then we, had that entrepreneurial itch rising up. And Jodi, more than me, her mom and stepdad both had practices in physical therapy and dermatology. So for her, it was, she's seen it, and she grew up like doing hot packs and cold packs in her mom's practice and cleaning and all the things. So she definitely had more background. For me, it was a bigger leap, and it was scary as it was really scary to do that. But we went for it, and, fortunately with some good guidance, it worked. We took the plunge and didn't have a plan in place, everything that I recommend. And after 6 months, Jodi left the Veterans Hospital. So we had our entire household dependent on a new business that was, a year and a half in. So definitely a combination of fearlessness and a little bit of probably recklessness mixed in there.
Wise recklessness is, it can be, we can call it different than reckless if you're actually thinking through it, right? So, but I love that you did that. It's one of those, I think you said you were together for 7 years before you got married. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So, in those 7 years, to your point, you probably built a pretty strong foundation for your guys' relationship. Yeah. What would you say was kind of key to making sure that you didn't get married in May, start a business in June, and get divorced in July? How did you, what did you kind of build growing up as you were dating and courting that led to being able to have that strength together? Yeah,
great question. I think, first and foremost, probably trust. Just ultimate support. Jodi definitely gave me 100% support to negotiate the lease and that we could make it, to expand that 6,000 square foot space, and hire therapists and personal trainers and build this center, that included fitness membership and massage. So definitely she gave 100% support. And we always had that foundation. with each other. And yeah, then Jodi was much better. We're very different in that she is way better at me at living in the moment and relaxing. And I'm, definitely forward thinking and also just very attention to detail. So, so we had that great yin yang synergy as well to kind of keep each other balanced, which does connect even to the kids because we definitely have to merge all that together in our parenting styles and approaches.
Yeah, for sure. It takes a lot of work to make all of that happen. So how far into it before you guys opened your second shop?
Yeah, good question. It wasn't that long. Probably either a year, somewhere in year two, maybe the beginning of year three, but it wasn't that long. Pretty exciting. We had I taught at Rutgers Director of Physical Therapy program, and Kevin Schnitzer was one of the best students. He wanted to come do his internship with us, his final internship, which was a major compliment. And then he wanted to join us. And that was part of our secret sauce, just really having this, world-class interns come and us developing them as people and as great physical therapists, and then having them join the team if it was a good fit. So Kevin joined the team, and he was a student when we had Sage. I mean, he was just out of this world. He won every award, his graduating class, and he was looking to expand and learn new skills. And there was an opportunity at a new location that a physician had told us about where they were already there and they wanted us to come. And Jodi and I got it started just for a month or so. And then Kevin hit the ground running with less than 2 or 3 years out of school, just started managing a new office.
That's awesome. So if my math serves me correctly, if your second one you started after about right at maybe the beginning of your third year, you guys were less than a year away from now having a kiddo as well, getting thrown into the mix. So you're opening a second shop. A kid is now on the way. You're bringing in interns to be able to help train them up. There's a lot of stuff going on there. There's one thing to have the foundation, and there's the other thing to keep the structure up when a hurricane starts coming. So talk me through a little bit about that. I'll call it a beautiful mess that started to happen at the same time.
Yeah, you're right. We definitely were having a family as we were having a new office. And for those listening that are still in brick and mortar businesses, and in a location will definitely test your mettle because you can't be in two places at once. So you're really going to refine. And with your military background, this is where your leadership and your delegation and all these skills come into play. And so I remember. I'm trying to think if we had our second office or not, but then, okay. So I do remember actually when Sage was born, Kevin was still an intern. And so we had another physical therapist that was supervising me. Kevin treated my caseload. So I stayed out one day. Jodi had a 24-hour labor, and she tried to deliver naturally, and it just didn't go well. The doctor was like, finally, listen, we have to do a C-section. And when I came back the next day, and we didn't have, Kevin could only work with so much freedom as an intern, even, with supervision. So, he stepped up. A lot of things were happening together because our second physical therapist, Jeff, had only been with us, maybe a few months. But we didn't have that second office yet, thank God. That would have been even a new level of challenge.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because definitely my leadership and management skills were still in their infancy for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm hoping that mine are still in its infancy, right? Because I want to be continually growing in that form and fashion. But so one day off, your wife had to be thrilled about that. You only taking one day off to then go right back into the office and start, keep on growing the practice. What sort of conversations were you guys having when all that was happening? I mean, there's so much that the couple goes through when a kid is thrown into it that there's got to be a lot of communication side of the house to keep it rolling. Well, how did that go for you guys?
Yeah, for sure. And, Jodi and I just didn't know any better. We had everything invested in this 6,000 square foot space. So we were in that space at the time. And we just really didn't have a written plan on how we were going to do it. So yeah, it was scary to be away, and I wish that of course, in hindsight, right? This is everything we're talking about for the fathers listening. The sooner they can get the skills and have the mentorship and have more time with their families and not make those extreme sacrifices. And even today, I mean, everything's changed. Now there's the paternity leave, and I'm just
Yeah.
I see this for the fathers, and it just wasn't in place 17 years ago when we had Sage and any of our children, for that matter. So yeah, the conversations were, along the lines of how are we going to do this? And really Jodi became the leader of our household. And I continued, really even more so, continued to be the leader of our livelihood, professionally and with the business. That was pretty much the clear dividing line.
That's awesome that you guys, well, before I allude to that, was that like an intentional conversation? You guys sat down and was like, okay, well, you need to, Lance, focus on what's going on in the business so we don't lose that. I'll stay focused on the home, or was it just kind of natural that you guys did it that way?
It kind of happened naturally, but I mean, it was spoken more or less as well. Look, I'm going to hold things down at home, and you hold things down at breakthrough, and yeah. So it probably wasn't as organized as it could have been, but things just became very clear, and it kind of did just fall into place, really.
Nice. Yeah, the shift for us when I left the military, and now started homeschooling was I am in a world that I never expected to be in. I work from home. I'm teaching my kids. I'm waiting for my wife to come home from work, which is an odd feeling in and of itself. And that just kind of naturally happened that way. And as we're talking, and I was like, man, oh man, I can't wait for you to retire because it's super uncomfortable for me. I'm happy that I'm doing it. I love doing it, but man, oh man, I can't wait to have her by my side to help me through all of this stuff. So, at what point did you guys get to be able to say, okay, well, all right, Jodi, you're coming back into the business now. At what age was your daughter before you kind of were like, okay, yeah, we can actually do this?
Yeah, and Jodi probably made more sacrifices than would be ideal for everyone listening, because I'm pretty confident she didn't get a complete reprieve from bookkeeping and some of the other hats that she was wearing in the company. Even on payroll, I mean, I think it was way later in the business when, even just during vacation, she was able to hand that off completely. But she did have, normal maternity leave, so a couple months. And then she came back and treated, and, she might have treated less and a little bit more on the business responsibilities, because that would help balance things out. And Sage went into daycare, I think, at 9 months. We both felt comfortable with her doing some daycare, which, again, I think in a perfect world, we would have let her go to daycare that soon. And
Yeah. I think that for me, once I realized about au pairs, that changed my world completely, because that's way better to me than a daycare. Because like I've got my 1-year-old daughter, she's running around the house, right, and she gets to be here, and I get to just walk outside and see her smiling little face, dad, 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 dad. It's like if she was in daycare, I would miss all of those little moments and watching her run around and doing all these things, and it kind of makes me sad that I missed a lot of that with my boys, right? Because, I went into daycare. My wife and I were both working full time. We were both, we're on the other side of the world when my second kid was born. And it's like, well, these are the cards you're dealt, and this is what you do, and you make it happen, and it was, you don't realize what you're missing out on until you're missing out on it, which is why I love to share stories all the time about that.
And how old were your children, your boys, when they went into daycare? What part of the world were you when your second was born?
So my second was born in Japan. So we were living in just outside of Tokyo, in the province of Tokyo still, but just outside of Tokyo. And really, I mean, honestly, once my wife got off of maternity leave, which for the first kiddo, for Adam I think she got, was it 12 weeks off, maybe 8 or 12 weeks off, something like that. So then right after that, right into daycare. And then, Same thing for the second one. She got a little bit more time off for the second kid. The military kind of adjusted their time, and I think she got 4 months off, 16 or 20 weeks, something like that. I think it was 16 weeks she got off for the second kid, which was great. So then, but at that point on, right into daycare, so it was what it was. That's the way that the military worked it, and she had to go back to a job. So. I can't imagine now, like if we were to have a kid when she got out, what that would look like. I mean, we're all done at 3, and she retires next year, so I cannot wait for her to be home and help to take care of the kids and watching her. Like, it's one thing to watch my kids walk by the office door, but it's another thing to watch your wife walk by the office door in the middle of the day. Like, it's a lovely feeling. So I can't wait for that to happen, and be able to.
Oh man, that's very exciting.
It is, and I would love to steal some good ideas that you have on how did the two of you balance working in business together? My wife is kind of thinking she wants to be in the business, but not really sure what she wants to do. So she's still trying to figure it all out. So what recommendations would you have for how that would go? And how did you guys kind of make sure that you guys stayed successful and stayed married after 20 years, which congrats again on that, 20 years in next week. That's phenomenal. What kind of tips for success would you have on that?
Sure, both for you and for everyone listening who's considering venturing into.
I don't care about everybody listening. This is a selfish question. I want to know for me.
So, someone that we worked with in our business, a consultant named James Glenn Sr., who one of the first pieces of advice he gave us, as I think we're just a husband and wife business, probably no other therapists, very few people on the team. He recommended that we make sure we put things in writing, that we're not just around the kitchen, talking about everything and making decisions, and that nothing was documented. So you really do have to document and treat one another, have this professional, you can't take shortcuts and missteps, because you are wearing roles in the organization. So really try to make sure you're still following best practice and staying organized. So that'd be one thing. And then, it was a real challenge because in a 300 square foot room, and we were actually treating together, I mean, everyone can hear every conversation, and Jodi kept her last name after we were married. So people didn't immediately know we were married. And like on a Monday morning, how was your weekend? It was really interesting. But as we got a little bit busier, I worked Tuesday and Thursday nights. She'd work Monday and Wednesday, and we'd be there at different times. And, there were pros and cons to that, but that certainly made a lot of those conversations that people didn't necessarily know. Because at first I was, even the name thing, that was, just something that I wasn't sure about initially. But then it was actually a big benefit that not every single person knew immediately that we were married together. So, that's a detail that's, part of our story. And then really Jodi came up with the idea of just making sure that we had boundaries. Certainly, and everyone's kind of heard this before, most likely the entrepreneurs, that, because we were really working a lot, right, with a startup and a new business and a new family. But certainly once we hit the bedroom and it was time to get ready to go to bed, like there was no business conversation anymore, zero. Like even if you thought of something, like it had to wait. So, definitely having those clear boundaries. And then even dinners, right, just rewinding it earlier, trying to balance the conversation. And rather than just for her to hit me up or me to have her up, did you do this or did you do that? So we're making a task list and seeing if we follow through on things. So trying to avoid that and just have some balanced conversations about life and maintain the fun and all of our interests and passions, and even breaking away. I mean, traveling and we love to be outdoors. I think similar to you. Oh yeah. So making sure that we're getting out in nature, hiking, going on trips, and that's part of the reason. Yeah, Jodi and I, we didn't have children for 3 years. We looked at our calendars. We were away having fun every weekend. We were really 110% having fun together, and
that's awesome.
We went to a friend's wedding on the weekend in Scotland. We did anything and everything we could. We really tried to maximize life. Even with the new practice, we were able to break away for friend Giles' wedding in a castle in Scotland and some things
Oof.
like that. So those, yeah, pretty amazing. So yeah, those are a couple of the biggies. Just really making sure you're not always talking business, and I struggle with this. So again, like I said, Jodi's way better, living in the moment, me more balance, having more fun. I've got a lot of high perfectionism in me, so everything's not perfect. I'm having this working in the background. So once I had a good mentor, eventually it really taught me to flip the switch. So really know when my schedule is going to be family and wife and children and recreation, and really be in the moment and do that. And easier said than done. It's still,
Of course,
knowing that concept and then practicing it is a whole nother thing.
yeah, and I think that allowing ourselves the ability to receive that, hey, not right now, from our spouse is another thing as well. Like,
Yeah.
hey, now's not the time, and not take that as an
Right.
offense. Like, no, you're stopping me from getting out this wonderful idea in my brain, or whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
was that a struggle for you, and how did you guys kind of make sure that you had the ability to say, hey, now's not the time for that conversation without offending the other person?
Yeah, no, definitely. You're right. I mean, but once we had our framework, our rules established, all it took was a simple reminder, but it still wasn't necessarily easy, especially for me as as the CEO of the business, and probably more so than I should have, I felt the burden of providing, wanting to make sure the company's well, and feeling the pressure of, again, we were 100% supporting our family with a small business. So these forces are in absolute conflict. It's not easy.
Yeah, for sure. It's not at all. All right, so now you guys are running a business with multiple. When did you get into like 3 and 4? Like, how many kids did you have at that point? Like, where were you at? What year in this business venture did you start opening like multiples?
Yeah. So this is a great question. You're really making me think. So we opened
That's my
our
goal.
third office
Yes.
in Voorhees, and Jodi might have been pregnant at the time. Jodi also had some health challenges at that time. She was trying to treat while she was pregnant with our son, and autoimmune problems really kicked in. And her time her knee was like swollen like the size of a cantaloupe. And it's kind of like undifferentiated, almost like rheumatoid arthritis, but not exactly that in the rheumatological world. So she probably pushed harder than she should, right? Again, made more sacrifices, but we didn't feel like we could support it at that time, which may or may not have been accurate. Maybe that was a mindset problem. I don't know. But yeah, so we had a third location, and Jodi going through some health challenges while she was pregnant with our son Aspen. And after Aspen, she definitely came back and treated less. And so I don't want to jump ahead of you, but the au pair thing, I know very clearly that we had 3 offices, and it was 2011 when we had the third office, and that's when we had Sierra. And we did, fortunately, have an au pair, wonderful au pair. We keep in touch with Nikki. She just visited last week. She's from South Africa. And she married her local man, Ryan, who we keep in touch with. And pretty amazing. But even with au pair help, with 3 offices, about 30 employees, that's when I was redlining for a lot of different reasons. And, working over 8 hours a week, not sleeping enough, not exercising, and actually that's sick. So that was a moment when I had to pause and take better care of myself and start to do some things. We had the third office, and I was pretty much the direct report now, because Jodi was starting to be busier with a growing family. Family of 5 now.
Yeah, and I think there's that point in every entrepreneur's life where they finally realize that maybe I should hire some of this stuff out. Was that exhaustion, that sickness, that I've got 30 employees, I'm working 80 hours a week? Was that kind of the moment you realized you needed a little bit more, like you got an au pair to help out in the home, now you need you need a work au pair. You need somebody over here to help out with what's going on. Is that about the time you figured that out?
Yeah, for sure. And we were fortunate enough to really land some world-class talent at that time, like our first executive and a therapist that had a significant amount of management experience, managing an office with, 8 or 10 therapists. I mean, very large. And we had an HR person with some skill and experience. But the challenge was I wasn't developed enough as a manager, and I was still treating full time. So to be fair on myself, but a combination of too much technician work and not enough skill, and the people weren't supported properly and adequately, and we weren't able to keep all this world class talent that we had initially. So over time, I developed those skills, and we were able to attract and actually really better support our future team members.
So the guy I just interviewed, if all of these come out in order, it'll be my last podcast. He the analogy he made, and I really liked it, was working on a sports team, right? So when you're first starting off, you're likely on the field. You're out there doing the work. You're the person on the field. You become a manager and you turn into the coach on the sideline. You cannot jump in and play goalie at the same time as you're trying to call the plays from the field. But eventually, when you're actually operating the business, you're in the owner's box, able to see the whole thing on what's going on and saying, hey, of course, he mentioned the 3-course meal that comes in and the air conditioned and bulletproof glass. You're safely behind all of this stuff, managing what's actually going on. You're not the one that's even calling the plays in the field anymore. You've got somebody that's doing that. Are you more at this point sitting up in the owner's box, or are you still on the coaching sideline?
I'm still on the field at that time.
No, I mean right now, this moment.
Now at this moment, yeah. At this moment, yeah, I'm definitely in the owner's box now. Although, yeah. I mean, with Breakthrough, because Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Kiyosaki says that you haven't reached that owner's hat from self-employed until you can go away for a year and the business will still grow without you.
Yeah.
So luckily with Breakthrough, reached that. And studying investing. But now with my new company, I am on the field again with Denali. So just to be fair, I am definitely still on the field some, but I'm having a blast because I'm supporting other entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. I can do it virtually, can work around my schedule, similar to you, right? The kids can come and go, in a big way.
But when you're a real player, it's really hard to not be on the field. Like, you want to be on the field. Like, there's things you want to be able to do. So which is hence why you started doing it. But how did you?
Breakthrough,
go ahead. Sorry.
Definitely. Yeah, I was just saying with Breakthrough, yes, made it to that owner's box for sure. But it took me a lot longer from where we left off in that story.
Yeah,
I was really on the field for a long time.
I was about to go back into that. So there's a transition, obviously. I mean, this was 2011. You said that you had your third one, and you're working 80 hours a week. You're getting sick. I realized I need to do stuff. How did you start to work from realization to turning it? Let's just go to where you turned into the coach, where you weren't working in the field anymore. Kind of what was that transition like?
Yeah, so I think one of the best things I did was study partnerships and leverage partnerships. And I'm a massive advocate for this. And I'm excited to share it more with, everyone. And I've got a second book that I'll put out in 2025 to share more of my experiences with partnerships, because I think it's underutilized.
Yeah.
So by studying partnerships, and I mentioned Kevin and then Nate and then Nick came on as partners, and over time, having people who mind skin in the game, and, mutual opportunity to succeed, that really helped us grow a little further faster with the 4th and 5th offices, and to get some of those layers of other leaders in place. So there was, when you have, eventually I had a manager at each location, and eventually a director of operations, middle manager for 5 locations. I was wearing the marketing director hat for most of the 13 years where up until 2018. So to have a marketing director, those were all, massive wins to be able to free myself up. But it is a challenge, especially in some industries, to be able to afford and support replacing all these hats. Even besides just like documenting what you do and the processes and that, fitness is definitely sort of lower margin industry, and physical therapy is certainly on the lower end of the totem pole of the medical world. And kind of what you said earlier, right? Made me think about physical therapists. You said something that was almost the lines of being very generous. You said like you'd be so generous to almost to a flaw. Yeah, I mean, as healthcare workers, we've got the Peace Corps gene. We really want to just help people, and so yeah, a combination of not having enough skill, being a tougher industry. It was a lot of between 2011 and 2018 was still a lot of work to really create what Ben Hardy now calls a self-managing company in 2018. Hopefully people can, I want everyone that I come into contact with to be able to do it a lot faster than 13 years.
Yeah, that's perfect, because that's going to be the question I was going to ask. Like, it took you 13 years to do that. What steps would you take now to have made that quicker? Which I would imagine would have been way better for your health, your wife's health, the family, the everything, right? So, what steps would you have taken, and what were the? I'll start with that.
Okay. I mean, so good. And I guess fortunately, I tried to bring all this together and create a framework. And I put a book together and published it in 2020 called The 4% Breakthrough. And there's 3 sections, 3 steps. So the first is really going introspective and deciding what's most important to you and doing some real thought exercises. And then secondly, it's the business fundamentals. And then lastly, it's integrating physical and mental health into that, which was mental health, nutrition, sleep, exercise, and posture. So yeah, that was my cut at really trying to get it right. Because number one, knowing what's most important in my life. I wasn't clear enough, like step 1, chapter 1 of the book, knowing my priorities, knowing my mission, knowing my core. If I really would have had my health and family, maybe I would have made less extreme sacrifices rather than going back to work day 2. Would that really have made a difference, with my first child? Probably not. We would have probably still survived. And even Jodi trying to work with, a knee swollen like a balloon, when she can barely walk, and trying to treat physical therapy patients, we probably made some sacrifices that, weren't looking through some of those more important lenses and that weren't necessary.
Yeah. What were some of the clues, if you looked back on it, before you got to the 80 hours of work a week and starting to get sick? What were some of those clues that somebody else might be experiencing right now to be able to say, okay, really now's the time. I need to start figuring this out?
Yeah, great question. I think some things would be not having enough pleasure. So it's what I call no life syndrome. Right? If you're not getting time for yourself, if you're not getting any exercise, if you're not able to sit down and have a meal, if you're not sleeping well, sometimes someone just asked me this week, they're starting to have some disturbed sleep and asked me my best recommendations. It's not a chronic problem for them yet, but that is an early warning indicator. So if you pay attention to some of those things, take some action, make some improvement, because you want to recognize some of those flags before they become a bigger problem. And for me, my digestive system, my GI system stopped working. So I was rendered helpless at that point because I couldn't eat. I was either in the bathroom or embarrassingly running to the bathroom. And that doesn't go well when you're treating patients, right?
Yeah.
You're meant to be helping them with their health. And even supporting our team. I can remember a July 2011 whole team meeting when I was standing in front of 25 people, including summer interns, and I barely had enough energy to stand, and my joints were aching because I didn't have nutrition. So don't let it get to an extreme. Take care of yourself along the way.
Yeah, I typically, and I've been harassed about this and haven't changed it yet, but I almost always say that my priorities in life are God, my wife, and then my kids, right? Everything else comes after that, my business, everything else. And they're like, well, a few people have been like, where are you on that, right? Because if you're not taking care of you, then you're not going to be able to do those things, and try to implement, try to be the best you can, show up to be the best you can for your wife and kids. And that is one thing that I noticed, even in the military. When does my dog want to come in and harass me while I'm on a podcast? I don't. Yeah. So I keep the dog treats right here, just
Oh,
in
very
case,
nice.
just
I love
in
it.
case. I can give him the spicy beef jerky. He'll definitely leave me alone after that. So, but that'll have the issue that you were talking about with the bowel issues.
Yeah.
So, but we don't need that in the house. But like in the military, I was constantly gone. I was getting worked like crazy. I was in some training, and one of the guys was like, "Look, one thing that we tend to do as leaders is find the person who is a really good worker, like the best horse we have, and ride them until they die." Right. And that's not a great place to be. And as entrepreneurs, we tend to do that to ourselves. Like we're like, nope, let's go. We're gonna just go and go and go and go and go until we just can't go any further. Well, at that point, you are you're a sack of potatoes for your family and your business. Like you're not, I don't want to use the word worthless, because you're not worthless, but boy, are you worth a whole lot less than you were,
Totally.
And it's like, you got to catch on to those signs. Anybody that's listening, catch on to those signs. One book I really loved is Who Not How. And there was another one, Buy Back Your Time, that I recently listened to. Boy, that was phenomenal too. Really enjoyed listening to that. Talking about buying back a lot of those moments that you need, like that you're wasting your time doing a bunch of different stuff, so you can really focus on your core being and what you want to be doing. So that being said, I want to fast forward now. Like you are teaching and coaching folks on how to kind of work through these moments. You're sitting up in the owner's box and you're in your practice, you're really kind of overseeing, making sure that's all running the way it needs to be. And now you're like really engaged in trying to help other entrepreneurs find out even where the owner's box is. It may not even be built yet for them to sit in. So kind of talk me through that process and what it is that you do there.
Yeah. So the one chapter that I didn't mention, and it's a little bit of mixed feelings on this, probably as most founders do. So we powered through the pandemic. And then in 2021, a company that partnered with private equity approached our CEO, our partner was the CEO, and they wanted to meet with us. And Jodi and I agreed to meet. And if we were going to share financials, we just asked them to come with something specific. So we didn't go down rabbit hole of resources. And they made an outrageous offer. And it's always best to be in a position where you're not looking for opportunities like this, or to sell, to exit. Our partners saw this as the best path forward, so we did partner with this company in 2021, November 2021, and then that was a whole new thing. And that was my first 8-figure company that I was able to coach as part of the deal. I was coaching the CEO, the regional director, so I was able to keep. I was, in the owner hat, and then also my new company actually coaching the organization. So it was a fun dynamic, really great. I had a blast. We had a lot of success, a lot of growth. I mean, breakthrough. We kept our own name, our offices. We immediately went to 6 offices, and then we acquired another company, and we went to 12 locations. So, a lot of exciting things happening, and fun to be involved, supporting, everyone. And then the next private equity company came, and we had recapitalization just in October of 2023. So, more than likely, Jodi and I, we were certainly cashed out of the business. There may be some equity opportunities for us that are still available. We've actually recommended that because we still live in town, and a really big part of the community, and still more or less the face of the businesses. And so anyway, just FYI on that. So not necessarily. I was in that owner's box up until recently with our first company, and so now with coaching, I realized I wanted to have the most fun helping other entrepreneurs and just paying all the lessons forward. So I definitely wearing most of that with the new company.
Yeah. That's awesome. The joy for me, I absolutely love coaching. It's just a lot of fun to be able to watch people get the ahas and see, watch them skip steps that you totally tripped over, and see kind of how the impact can actually be made. It's so much fun to be able to do all of that. It is a lot of fun. That's a field I love to be on. So I'm completely with you there. what kind of companies are you kind of working with right now, and what are you especially right now seeing with some of these businesses? Well, let me just start with the companies because it may change the direction. What kind of companies are you typically working with right now?
Yeah. The way I approached it up until recently, I took the hardest path and, didn't want to support physical therapy companies because I didn't want to compete with ourselves, which may make sense. Um, but I love helping healthcare companies and healthcare organizations, obviously, and I've got a passion for that. And even I would love to see healthcare get a lot better. So I've got several physicians and even a functional medicine doctor that I just started helping in the last week. And I've got several financial planners that I'm helping. So those are the two kind of niches. But other than that, it's really been owners of six-figure companies that want to hit seven figures, who are seeing some early warning signs of stress, not handling it well, and who want to get paid, have a healthy lifestyle, and get paid for the roles they have and have double-digit profitability beyond that, and create a company that they can keep, right? Take on partners and have some legacy, or that is a valuable asset that they could decide to sell for a premium. So I've kind of been industry agnostic and going that way, but a couple of industries are starting to emerge that I'm having fun with.
Nice. Yeah, the financial planning and all of that was one of the. I almost became a financial planner for a little while. Once it's funny because I was a paycheck to paycheck guy who had no idea even what a savings account was till I married my wife, and then all of a sudden I'm like, dude, I should totally be a financial planner. Those two don't really marry, but it did because I went through and got a bunch of education. I went through and tried to do all that, and it's such a different world, but. I looked at that as not a business but a service, and ended up going a different direction. But that was ignorance on my part by not knowing how you can make everything a business. And it's
Right.
if you look at it properly and you put the right people in place and the right strategy in place, everything is a business, not just a service. So
For sure.
but
And service-based businesses are in a lot of ways better than product-based businesses, especially right when you learn all the great customer service skills you have and the leadership skills, especially like human capital, like supporting people.
Yeah. And I think that there's so much more flexibility as well, right, in being able to do that because you're not hinged to a product at all.
Right.
Like you as long as you have good people and good communication skills, go out and do it. Like it's the world is your oyster. So how about let's talk about your kids a little bit, right? So how are they when they see what you have done and what you do? Kind of what conversations do you have about the business side of the house? How much exposure have they had to all of that?
Yeah, this is fun because the first thing that I think of when you ask this question is a pivotal time when, so I guess it was 2018 when our partner was taking over the CEO role. And, the business had been pretty established at that point, right? Application business, multiple seven figures. I was definitely, getting paid in payroll, for that CEO role. And I was still treating, but had some, kind of guaranteed type payment as much as you can as an owner. And when I handed off that role, that compensation went to our partner and CEO as it should have. And this is a time when my wife was just like, really just questioning this whole second act of wanting to like recreate myself and help other entrepreneurs. Because I guess initially I talked to a franchise broker, we did, and I realized pretty quickly, even though it was fun to be on the Shark Tank side for a couple of months and really study what they're presenting, but just realized it was too entrepreneurial for that. So then I started Denali Consulting and was trying to figure this out, but there was no like guaranteed, income. I was going to start from square one. And so I had a conversation with the kids and I said, listen, Daddy's going to start some coaching and I was very upfront with them. So this was 2018, right? So the kids were, definitely younger, but they understood enough. And I said, we might have to spend a little bit less, make some sacrifices. I wanted them to know. I didn't want them, I guess, to go back to your earlier question, right? Of, how to raise children so that they're not, feel entitled. So,
Yeah.
but fortunately, we didn't have to make extreme sacrifices, but it was definitely a new time, and we had to figure it out. And a new business, especially as a coach, right? People were looking for Tony. There was a lot of imposter syndrome, and people probably legitimately are, and I certainly felt that way. People wanted, Tony Robbins and Ken Hardy and whoever. So it took a long time for me to really be confident enough that I could help other entrepreneurs and not just physical therapists who was, not actually going out of my way to help,
Yeah.
sense of credibility in our industry. So that's one conversation we had with the kids, and we did keep in the loop. We really, during the pandemic, my wife started a family thread, and we are very communicative with each other. Funny photos with the dogs, and just try to keep it light and fun and engaging. So I don't know, lots of different stuff, but those are like two of the things that really come to me first.
Okay. And was there any involvement with them at a younger age as you were kind of growing it? Like, I mean, obviously they saw like dad going back and forth, mom doing the books at home. There was a lot of all of this stuff. What kind of exposure did you bring them into when they were younger?
Oh yeah. So I remember Sage and Aspen coming into, to shadow me one day when that was the day, come work with your parent.
Yep.
So that was fun. And at that point, Sage really wanted to be in medicine. She wanted to be a doctor or a surgeon, and something medical. And Aspen still wasn't decided at that point. So I can remember that. And yeah, the kids definitely, they would, because we did so many community events, they were with us at many things. Even Sage, going back to the beginning, when she was 9 months old, we won the best practice in the country, voted by our private practice physical therapy peers. And she went to San Diego with us.
Nice.
And we kind of won the award with her like in our arms. So, and even her second year, I mean, I think she traveled with us like 5 times. We were trying to, I have to think about it, but it was quite a bit. So between community events, being at 5Ks and speaking events, they were anywhere and everywhere. And I will be curious to see what they really remember from all those things. But now I think some of that, they are fitness, very, almost fitness addicts, like Sage and Aspen. I have to go to the gym every day. So some of our, being physical therapists and personal trainers and having that kind of industry, some of that's rubbed off as well. So no, they were definitely in the thick of it, even though they were at younger ages in a lot of ways. But there were also, the other parts of it. I can remember when Sage was, I think it was only Sage at that point, where we lost coverage, and I had to send Jodi and Sage away on vacation without me and stay back and treat. And again, whether or not that was actually what happened, I guess some patients would have not received their care because everything we had lined up, and that under financially. It's hard to go back in time and really, see if that was a mindset thing or actual reality. Yeah. But a lot of extreme examples like that as well on the way, of course, right? That we want to learn from and share to the listeners.
Yeah. Are there any things that you wish you would have exposed them to more when they were younger? I mean, they're still young enough, obviously, now that you're exposing them to a bunch and they're watching how things are growing. But you wish that you would have exposed them to more.
Well, they definitely are really were exposed to the fitness part. But no, I think we could have done a better job even getting them involved in teaching them more of the inner workings of the business a little bit sooner. Just trying to visualize that, because maybe I'm wrong, right? Because I do think they would have had to have an interest, and at that time they didn't have an interest. However, Sage is now in DECA. Aspen is in DECA, like a leadership business organization. Sage is, just one president, so we're proud of her for that. She just went to Anaheim for a trip for that, and is being exposed to more like leadership conferences. And Aspen, I mentioned, with his first job, and even just a couple weeks ago, I saw on the kitchen counter two flyers, one for power washing marketing, and like a marketing flyer for a company, and one for
Nice.
pet care. So Aspen's like starting two different businesses,
That's awesome.
So I do think, yeah. So the kids are kind of like headed more towards this entrepreneurial path more recently. So I think that's good, and I've certainly tried to really share that, since that's my greatest passion now. Obviously the early part of my career, my first act was helping individuals get and stay healthy, and the community get and stay healthy, and helping entrepreneurs get and stay healthy. So it is fun to see some of that rubbing off on them and them kind of heading in that direction. And even us getting to work together now. All three of the children are actually working in the business with me with Denali,
Nice.
so we can talk about that a little bit. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that most things, in general are caught, not taught. So they're able to see a whole lot more. And while as much as I say that I want to be as intentional as possible and expose them to as much as possible, if they're just in the house, they're going to be exposed to a ton, because they're going to see the trials, they're going to see the conversations, they're going to see what's going on, and like they just get exposed to it. But you mentioned it, and I definitely want to dig into it. In the last little bit we have left here is what sort of involvement do your kids actually have now in the business? What and how purposeful was that versus them kind of reaching out and saying, "Yeah, let's totally do this, Dad"?
Yeah. So, Breakthrough Physical Therapy and Fitness was our first child, and that was, we grew to, a nice size. And I would have imagined them being involved with Breakthrough. But, things don't always go as planned.
Yeah.
So now with Denali and the combination of the kids, really expressing their entrepreneurial interest and passions a little bit. They're involved in the business. Sadie is helping me make social media posts. She's very good at that. She does that in a dance company. And it's been, it helps in miscellaneous ways. Looking up influencers who have like trending posts just for me this week. And looking at their topics so that I can make sure I'm using some of those topics and some of those hooks in my post. Sierra, she is good, for, she's 12 and now 13. She went through my partnership book and went through everyone that had contributed their section on their Google Drive. And it's the ultimate challenge. And it's so much fun to try to figure out ways that I can get them involved. I've got, spreadsheets where they should be, looking and documenting their things. But I just went back this week to an old school dry erase board. And then when they get home from school, I bring that up, and it's fun to, sit down with them and, teach them the project and to support them and go through it with them. So, and even for me to be a better leader, as my day goes on, because they are involved in the business, I'm trying to not miss any opportunities, both to teach them and for me to, delegate as much as possible, because that's a win-win.
Yeah, for sure. What has your wife been, doing with the kids as far as the business goes? And because she went through the whole thing together with you, you guys were side by side. So, how are you two now tag teaming this exposure for your kids?
Yeah, great question. Jodi is not involved in Denali, and she expressed that very clearly, that, hey, we did this once and that was a lot of fun, and
I'm never doing that crap with you again, Lance.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So in 2021, when we partnered with this bigger organization, she was able to hand off the HR, the human resources, and the bookkeeping hats, and really focus on the kids and the family. And she's been enjoying that. And that's part of the reason she's not interested in being involved in Denali. But because the kids have a business interest, she's helping Aspen with his flyer for his, power washing and daycare. They know mom has, an entrepreneurial and business background and savvy and skill. And as you know, right, biz dads would not be here and be successful if we didn't have incredible business moms.
Yeah.
So she's lending all her expertise and puts her heart and soul every day into, weaving all that into whatever the kids are interested in.
I absolutely love hearing that. And that is, I will very much echo and beat the drum on that having a strong biz mom at home, even if like my wife is not involved in the business at all at the moment, like without that support at home, without somebody who is, cheering me on, I would not be anywhere near where I am right now. I would be probably in a gutter somewhere, lost and confused, no idea what the heck is going on in life. I certainly wouldn't have a savings account, that's for sure, because I didn't know what one of those was. So,
Understood. And question for you: when your
yeah.
wife is able to retire next year, will you guys? It sounds like you're entertaining working together. So, do you think that'll happen? And what's her desire?
We are entertaining it. She is actually still trying to understand what her desire is, right? So,
Yeah.
what I want most of all is for her to be a mom. That's something she hasn't really been able to truly do on a day-to-day basis.
Totally.
So, if there is room after she is just fully pouring into our kids, we won't have a need for an au pair anymore. It'll be mom at home and just, loving life together as a team. So if she has room in her space that she wants to jump into that, then I'm all about it. If she just really wants to settle in and teach the kids Spanish and take over the homeschool and just be a mom, then I'm perfectly fine with that as well. So we'll see how it goes out. God will direct us one way or another. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I'll just share that was that's going to be a great gift for your wife with the age of your children, and it was a great gift for us in 2021. I mean, Jodi is loving it, and it's really incredible that she has that opportunity, because she obviously loved her profession, and that was something that she had to figure out. But she loved being able to pour in completely to the family even more.
Yeah, there is this identity thing of this: who am I without that job, without that profession? In my wife's case, without that uniform, like who am I? Which is why I'm constantly encouraging her about being a mom, like, because you're not a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. You're not. You are, right, but none of that means anything. You're a solid, amazing Christian mom and wife who loves being around her family. So focus on that part, and then whatever comes along the side of that, then that's fine. Like, your identity is not found in what clothes you put on. So your identity is found in way, way deeper than that. So, and that was, it was difficult for me jumping ship from the military. I left the military twice. I left once as an enlisted guy, went to college, ended up getting married, and then went back as an officer. And then I got tired again, and I said, no, it's time for me to go, So I had I felt like it was doubly that way for me the second time around, because like I didn't even have a chance to find an identity outside of the military before I went back into the military, right? I was only out for a couple of years, going to college. So to jump right back in, it was like, no, this is all I know. This is all I can do. And it was just a lot of work for me to kind of get over that mentally, and sometimes still kind of breaking through that barrier. Here I am a couple of years later. So, you and I will have to chat offline again and talk to maybe our wives chat, so my wife can kind of get some pointers from your wife on how that transition was, and how to take advantage of that as best as possible. But, well, Lance, I thank you so very much for jumping on the podcast. It was an absolute pleasure getting to know you a little bit more, chatting a little bit more. Before we completely wrap it up, is there anything that you that has popped up that you really wanted to cover that maybe we didn't, or that you thought we'd get to and we didn't? Is there anything, any last minute bits that you wanted to cover?
Wow, you really tapped into some memory banks for me, which was good. I think I'm going to pull out some photo albums and look at the timelines and review. But no, I had an absolute blast, and definitely appreciate everything you're doing, sharing all this goodness with, to help entrepreneurial dads and moms, and just entrepreneurs in general. So I appreciate that. And I guess any final messages would be, especially with the theme that you're focused on, to, when in doubt, probably err on the side of taking care of your family and yourself, and make those sacrifices a little less extreme, because you'll probably be able to power through. Obviously, you have to be careful to bang the guardrails and not go off the cliff. But be careful. Listen to those early warning signs, like we said, and don't make the sacrifices too extreme, because if you lose your health or your family, that's too far and you can't get that back.
Yeah, agreed. It's not, what good is this massive business and all this wealth if you lost your family or your health in the process? So
Yeah.
it's a waste.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I don't do a good enough job connecting, I don't think, but I hope, I don't explicitly express it, but I'm hoping that people catch it, is I like to go through a lot of those stories because, as we're telling these stories, as I'm listening to these stories, you could totally picture somebody hearing that and going, man, I'm actually right there in this story right now, and this guy busted through it, and this guy's able to still be a solid dad, and this guy, and to be able to take those things. So I'm hoping as people listen, they catch a lot of that, and they're like, hey, like I could really connect with somebody and understand where they're coming from when I get a lot of those backgrounds. So enjoy going back through those photo books and memory banks, and it's one of those things when you put it in the context and you hear, wow, yeah, I really was going through all of that crap at the same time, and we were able to push through it. Like it's a new level of excitement and appreciation for where you are. So thank you again, Lance, for coming on. I appreciate it. Everybody who's listening, thank you so very much for listening. If people wanted to reach out to you, Lance, somebody's listening and says, hey, this guy, I totally want him to coach me. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
For sure. My email, Dr. Lance Knaub at DenaliConsultingTeam.com, DrLanceKnaub. Denali like the mountain. Our website, you can reach me, DenaliConsultingTeam.com. I'm available on socials, LinkedIn. Yeah, DM me, email me directly. Happy to help. Always love to, just to help in any way. Especially love to help entrepreneurs with partnerships, as I mentioned. And if you don't have a plan in place, I'm a big advocate for doing some strategic planning, the exact opposite of what
Nice.
I did when we started our practice in our 300 square foot room. Have a plan in place, and that's a much better bet for sure.
That's awesome. All right. Well, definitely, folks, reach out to Lance. I very well may have to reach out to him myself for some stuff we got going on. So, but again, thank you, Lance. Thank you, everybody that's listening. Please like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what was awesome. If we sucked somewhere, don't tell us that. We don't want to hear it. But thank you all very, very much for listening, and we'll see everybody on the next show.
Thanks, Adam.